Team, my name is Monique. Welcome to my top 10 books of 2022. If you didn't know, this Bookwitchreviews is my channel, and I read 83 books in 2022, which is good for me, but not the best. But I did read some very nice books. So let's just jump straight into my top 10 of the year. And it was actually not as hard as it has been in some other years, though the top 3 was very close. Number 10, which is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which is a cozy fantasy following a orc mercenary who just wants to settle down and have a chill and open a coffee shop, and how she does that. And it's just super low stakes and very sweet, and with a very soft sapphic like subplot. It's not super long, obviously. There is a prequel coming, which I'm so excited about. I was lucky enough to meet Travis Baldree at a Black Crow and Macmillan event, and he signed my book, and it just I love this book. It's so cute, and it could easily have been higher up on the list as well, because I have a hard time numbering things, but this is number 10. Number 9 is A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland, which is a political intrigue low fantasy where we are following a anxious prince and his very grumpy bodyguard who misunderstand each other and talk loads, and the prince believes that he is on the outs with his sister, the empress, and so he says yes to do this investigation that is important because it has to do with money, as far as I remember. But what I mainly remember about this book is that I read it super fast. There's a ton of pining in it. It's really well written. I absolutely love it, and I got this arc from Black Crow PR as well, and it was just this was so good, and I loved it so much, and I highly recommend it. But yes, number 9. In at number 8 comes a book that I still haven't stopped thinking about, and that is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. In this book we are following Alex, who we are following from childhood through to adulthood in a world much like our own, except we're set in the 1950s, and there was a thing called dragoning where a ton of women and female identifying people suddenly turned into dragons, and this is not talked about. It is completely hushed up, and Alex is just sort of trying to live her life even though her aunt disappeared, and her sister, who isn't really her sister but is sort of a cousin, and just I love this book. It talks about female rage, and I loved the way that dragons were used as a sort of a personification of a female anger, and just I loved this, and that is why it is coming in at number 8. At number 7 we have Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, which is a book that is much loved, as it should be. This is a magical realism contemporary fantasy book where we are following Bree, who lost her mother a year prior and is now going off to sort of an elite school to just sort of try to get on with her life. However, it's not that easy to just get along when you're suddenly dragged into an Arthurian sort of society where there are monster slaying, and you find out that you might have ties to this sort of magic. It deals in racism, it deals with former pain and and grief, and it was so good and so beautiful, and I have blood marked really high up on my list of books that I'm going to read in 2023. Next up we have a much anticipated sequel at number 6, and that is The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, which is the sequel to The Jasmine Throne. The Jasmine Throne was in my top 3 of 2021, and this was so good. This is full of political intrigue and war and revolution, and we are following 2 women who were on opposite sides and are now on the same side somehow, and their mutual love and pining for each other. And it is so well written and so beautiful and so incredibly detailed and intrigue, and I love it very much, and I would like the next book right now because it's so good. Coming in at number 5 is a book that I only read in, did I read it in November or December? I can't remember, but I read Gearbreakers by Zoe Hanamakuta, and I loved it so much. This is a book that I have had on my radar for quite a while, but it's a sci-fi dystopia where we are following 2 young women who are rebelling against an oppressive sort of rulers who use giant mechas to do their bidding, basically. And this just And one of them used to be one of the pilots to control these mechas, and now she is willing to help the rebels burn this whole city and like government to the ground. And it's so good, and it's so funny, and it's so full of violence and humor and pining, and just I loved it very much. And the sequel is right up here with it. It's called Godslayers, and it's fully finished, and you should read it immediately. Next up at number 4 is one of my many editions of Babel by R.F. Kuang, which is a dark academia magical realism book set in the 1800s, where we are following Robin Swift, who is taken from his homeland of Canton and brought to England by the mysterious professor who brings him so that he can study at Oxford, and especially at the Babel Tower, because in this world we have what is called silverworking, which is sort of magical, and it is used by the translation of one word to another and the sort of meaning behind them. And this book was heartbreaking and so beautiful, and R.F. Kuang can do absolutely no wrong in my eyes. She can write in every genre apparently and write it brilliantly, and I loved this, and it was so good, and I want to read it again, and yet I am also scared because I feel like if I don't rush through it, it will really hurt my feelings. Now we have top 3. At number 3 is the first book that I read in 2022, and that is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers is one of my favorite authors of all time. This is another sort of cozy sci-fi, very low stakes. We are following a tea monk named Dex, who is just trying to find their purpose in life on this planet that might be Earth, might be just another planet, and then they sort of accidentally stumble into the robot Moscap, who, with the rest of his kind, disappeared like hundreds of years before, and now he is coming back to ask what does humanity need, and they go on a journey together. It's wholesome and beautiful and asks a lot of questions about like humanity's sort of just right to exist and what it is that you think that your purpose should be, which is a book that spoke deeply to my heart. And I reread it as well before I read the sequel, and I loved it just as much as the first time, and I think it's just a book that I'm going to continue to go back to when I need a little help. Now we got the top 2 that could be interchangeable, but this is no question. In at number 2 comes Nona the Ninth from Tamsin Muir, which is the 3rd book in the Locked Tomb series. In this book, Tamsin Muir once again just sort of rips my whole heart out and puts it back into my chest, slightly rearranged, but still the same. And I love it so very much. The first book, Gideon the Knight, follows a necromancer and a cavalier and this weird sci-fi world where death and necromancy is the sort of main way of moving forward in the world. And it's also a murder mystery, and I explained that really badly, but I love them so much, these books. Like, these are books that are some of my favorite in the entire world, and I could reread them like I think every 2 months if I had the time, and it would bring me joy. This book was another mindfuck, and it went not at all where I thought it would, and a little bit then at the same time I had figured something out, but with more questions. So the 4th book is hopefully coming out in 2023. We're crossing our fingers, called Electo the Ninth, because Nona came out of nowhere, and I'm ready for my whole heart to be shattered. And then finally, at number 1, a book that I read early and loved, and I speak about it what feels like all the time, and I would like all my friends to read it, and that is The Final Strife by Sahar el-Arifi, which is a revolutionary sort of war fantasy inspired by Africa and Arabian mythology, and it has the chosen one gone wrong and a competition to become a military leader, and it has drugs and mutilation and many other really horrible things, but it is also tied together with a really beautiful, very soft sapphic romance, and a main character who is plus size and a main character who is mute. And I loved this book so much, so very much so, and I don't know how else to describe it. It was always going to be in the top 5, and then the more I thought about it, it even won out over Nona, which is a surprise to everyone except for me, because it was so good, and I highly recommend it, and I think you should read it today. Can I take that off? Yes, I can. I love this so much, and you should read it. The sequel, Battle Drum, comes out this year, and I'm very, very excited because it seems like el-arifi just sort of went like, what shall I do? Write this amazing story and then ruin me. That's what she did. So this is my top 10 read of 2022. I read some really brilliant books. I also read some bad books this year, not gonna lie. We'll have another video for that. But I love these. And then very briefly, we're gonna have these special mentions. We have 2 non-fiction books that are mythology sort of based. We have Foxfire Wolfskin by Sharon Blackie, and we have Women and Other Monsters by Jess Zimmerman, which are 2 sort of short story collections that I absolutely adored. I highly recommend both. Then we also have the books that nearly came on to the top 10, but didn't, but are still very good and I highly recommend. So we have Cameron Hurley's The Light Brigade, which is weird and fucked up and very confusing time travel sci-fi, but very, very good. We also have The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, which is stunning adult fantasy with pirates and world building that is so good. And then we have Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, which is just humorous and vaguely sort of like soft in a weird way and just incredibly good as well, and I highly recommend. So yay. So that is the top 10. I hope you found some books maybe to love in 2023, and then I hope you really enjoyed this video because I enjoyed making it. And just if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button at the same time so you don't miss out on any other videos from me. You can also click the little bell which will give you a notification when I put up a new video, which I'm hoping to do more regularly once more. And then just remember that I am super proud of you, and whatever you read, I hope you love it. All right.